Some people collect stamps, others collect cats. Melissa collected likes. Instagram was her church, and she worshipped at the altar of double taps and filtered lattes. At 28, living in a small apartment in Ohio with more ambition than sense, Melissa genuinely believed she was destined for influencer stardom. She wasn't famous, but she sure acted like it. Every brunch photo, every faux candid shot of her sipping overpriced coffee was another brick in the pixelated empire she was building, and then into her carefully curated chaos walked Ethan, the human equivalent of a soft gray couch, reliable, comfortable, not particularly exciting. They met at a mutual friend's birthday dinner, the kind of event where everyone pretends to like quinoa salad. Ethan was 29, worked a boring desk job, and didn't even have Instagram. Melissa thought, wow, a man who doesn't take selfies? A unicorn. To her surprise, he didn't brag about his job, his car, or how many NFTs he owned. He was chill, like actually chill. So naturally, Melissa decided he must be her grounding force, her yin to her very online, very sparkly yang. Their first dates were aggressively normal. Coffee shops, flea markets, Netflix on her secondhand couch that smelled like regret. And for a while, it worked. She felt grounded. Boring, but grounded. Melissa posted their relationship online, obviously, with captions like "Found my person" and "Couple goals, y'all." Because if love wasn't documented online, did it even count? Her followers, mostly people she hadn't spoken to since high school, responded with heart emojis and envy. 2 years in, they got married in her parents' backyard with fairy lights and mason jars. It was rustic chic on a budget, because Ethan believed in things like savings accounts and responsible spending. Still, Melissa was glowing. She had a husband, a modest apartment, and a mediocre job answering phones for angry people. A fairy tale, right? Wrong. Because here's the thing. While Ethan was perfectly content coming home, kicking off his shoes, and watching reruns of whatever show had the least drama, Melissa was scrolling through her feed, watching other couples go to Bali, buy new Teslas, and somehow always have matching outfits. And the more she scrolled, the more her perfect little life started to look like beige wallpaper. Stable, yes, but soul-crushingly beige. So naturally she did what any modern woman in a quarter-life crisis would do. She started posing her husband like a prop in her Instagram story. At first, Melissa convinced herself this whole simple life thing was just a phase, like bangs or oat milk, something you try once and eventually grow out of. So when Ethan would come home, sigh like a man twice his age, and sink into the couch like he was auditioning to merge with it, she told herself it was cute, domestic, endearing even. But then one day, while sipping her third overpriced matcha and scrolling past yet another influencer couple buying a mid-century modern house with natural light and curated energy, it hit her. Her life wasn't aesthetic, it was real, and real didn't trend well. She started dropping hints, as one does when passive aggression is cheaper than therapy. Hey babe, maybe you should ask your boss about that promotion. Ethan, from under a pile of potato chips. Maybe. I'm good for now though. Translation. Absolutely never going to happen. Or maybe, she pushed, we could start a side hustle together? I saw a couple on TikTok who make 6 figures selling artisanal dog treats. Ethan, still chewing. That's cool. Melissa blinked. This man wouldn't hustle if a bag of money smacked him in the face and said, invest me. She started to spiral. Not publicly, of course. Online, they were still blessed. Photos of them clinking glasses, smiling under fairy lights, holding hands at farmers' markets, all carefully staged, filtered, and posted with captions like, living our best life. Behind the scenes, Melissa was growing resentful of Ethan's complete lack of sparkle. He was supportive, yes, sweet even. But he was so content being average, it made her want to scream into her ring light. Arguments began popping up like zits before a big date. Mostly about money or how Melissa wanted to travel more, and Ethan wanted to buy reusable grocery bags. They weren't fights per se, more like debates where only one person showed up with a megaphone. Ethan would say things like, let's be realistic, Melissa, which to Melissa sounded a lot like, Let's kill your dreams in a slow, responsible way. Every time he said realistic, her soul died a little. And yet, he wasn't a bad husband. He'd pick up groceries when she was tired. He'd text her memes when she was ready to rage quit her job. He even tried doing silly dance challenges with her, even though his moves made toddlers look coordinated. But Melissa didn't want not bad. She wanted fireworks, ambition, a man who'd fight dragons if it meant a brand deal. Instead, she had Ethan, the guy who thought upgrading their couch was too extravagant. And then, of course, came the party, the moment, the joke. It was one of those Pinterest-looking house parties where everything smelled like eucalyptus and approval. 10 people, 2 charcuterie boards, and way too much organic wine. Melissa, of course, was thriving. She had already taken 7 photos of the cheese arrangement and was mid-caption draft by the time Lila suggested a fun group game. The prompt was simple. What's your biggest personal achievement in the last 3 years? Around the room it went. New job titles, yoga certifications, a surprise engagement, and one woman who proudly announced she finally felt at peace with herself, which, honestly, sounded exhausting. Then came Ethan's turn. He paused, looked slightly uncomfortable. Social games weren't really his thing, and said, I guess just having a stable job. It's nothing fancy, but it pays the bills. Before anyone could nod politely or toss him a "that's important too," Melissa, fueled by Pinot Grigio and misplaced confidence, blurted, "Oh, please, let's be honest, your biggest accomplishment is marrying me." The room dropped into a vacuum of silence. Someone coughed. Someone else fake laughed. Melissa smirked like she'd nailed a punchline, but no one else seemed to be in on the joke. Ethan gave her a long, unreadable look. Not angry, just distant. Like a man who just realized the person sitting next to him didn't see him as a partner, but a project she once worked on and now regrets. Melissa tried to chuckle, throw in a quick, "I'm just kidding," but it came out hollow. The damage was already done. You don't unslap someone with a nervous giggle. Back home, Ethan asked her quietly, "Is that really how you see me?" Melissa, queen of deflection, snapped back, "Why are you being so dramatic? It was a joke. You're too sensitive." He said nothing, just went to bed. Melissa stayed up posting a carefully curated photo from earlier, the one where Ethan was smiling, before she verbally face-planted their marriage in front of a room full of people. Caption, "Grateful for a night full of laughs with my favorite human." And maybe that was the cruelest part. Not that she embarrassed him, but that she kept pretending everything was perfect, even when he stopped pretending back. After the party, the silence in their apartment stretched out like an old sweater Ethan refused to throw away, familiar, worn, and getting harder to ignore. Except this time, Melissa wasn't the one giving the silent treatment. It was him. No sarcastic comments about her 3 new plants named after TikTok trends. No half-laughs at the Instagram reels she shoved in his face. No random texts in the middle of the day that just said, "Buy milk and also look at this raccoon meme." He was present, yes, but in the same way a chair is present. Functional, mute, and emotionally unavailable. Melissa noticed. Of course she noticed. But did she say anything heartfelt, sincere, or remotely close to an apology? Absolutely not. Instead, she leaned harder into her strengths, avoidance and content creation. Meanwhile, Ethan had entered what Melissa described to her friends as some weird, moody phase. In reality, he was just done trying. No more little surprises. No more middle-of-the-night grocery runs because she suddenly needed blueberries for overnight oats she saw in a reel. And Melissa? She took his withdrawal as a personal attack. She started poking him with the same stick she'd always used, ambition. "You know," she began one night, folding laundry she only started because she needed something to slam for dramatic effect. "You could start networking more at work. Or maybe take that online course I sent you. It's free, and you literally play Sudoku on your phone for 2 hours every evening." Ethan didn't look up, just said, "I'm content, Melissa." Content. That word again, like nails on the chalkboard of her soul. "You're so lazy," she snapped, half hoping it would finally provoke him, make him react, prove he still cared. But he didn't yell, didn't defend. He just looked at her, really looked at her. And Melissa felt something shift, not in him, in her. A gnawing awareness that the balance of power was changing and not in her favor. So she did what came naturally. She went out, put on her best "I'm totally fine" face, met up with her single friends, and posted stories of clinking cocktails and blurry neon signs. No tags, no mentions of Ethan. She thought she was being subtle. She was about as subtle as a wrecking ball in a pottery shop. Ethan saw. Of course he saw. But he didn't say a word. He just stayed home, cooked his quiet little meals, and went to bed at 10 like a man who finally realized the fire was out, and no amount of gasoline disguised as Instagram content was going to bring it back. By now, Melissa was fully convinced that Ethan was the problem. Not her constant need for external validation, not the fact that she used their relationship as a social media prop. No. Obviously, the issue was that he lacked ambition and wasn't being fun enough, or spontaneous, or publicly amazed by her at all times. So she shifted gears, not to anything productive like a conversation, obviously. Instead, she turned affection into a performance-based reward system. A little praise here, a warm smile there, but only if Ethan was acting according to her invisible script. If Ethan agreed to try a new trendy brunch spot, she'd be flirty and giggly. If he so much as suggested they just chill at home for the weekend, cold front incoming, no hugs, no kisses, and God forbid, no intimate contact. Melissa was basically a human thermostat set to emotional punishment. In her head, she wasn't being cold. She was holding her standards. As if refusing to laugh at his jokes or sit next to him on the couch was going to spark some grand epiphany in him. It didn't. Melissa was still waiting for him to crack, to fight, to beg her to tell him what he did wrong. But all she got was the stillness of a man who'd learned that being Mr. Supportive didn't earn you a single photo on your wife's feed, just a seat in the background. And in that stillness, Melissa finally felt something she hadn't expected: unease. The tension in the apartment had thickened to the point where it could have been bottled and sold as a new essential oil. Resentment, with notes of bitterness and unsaid things. Melissa could feel it. Ethan could definitely feel it. The neighbors probably felt it too, and they were just trying to watch reruns of Wheel of Fortune in peace. It all came to a head one Wednesday evening, the kind of night where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. Melissa had just finished watching a vlog about someone turning their Etsy shop into a 6-figure lifestyle brand, and she was fuming. Not because she didn't have what that girl had, but because she could have, if only her husband were a little more driven. So she poked the bear. Again. "Have you even thought about applying for that senior position at work?" she asked while pretending to fold laundry, mostly just flapping clothes around for dramatic effect. Ethan, calmly chopping vegetables in the kitchen, replied, "It's not really the right time. I'm happy where I am." Happy. There it was again, that infuriating word. Melissa dropped the pretense of laundry and let the sarcasm fly. "Of course you are. Why aim higher when you can just coast through life?" Ethan didn't take the bait. He just sighed, like a man who had already seen this episode and knew how it ended. But Melissa wasn't finished, not even close. "You never want more, Ethan. You're stuck. We're stuck. And honestly, I'm tired of pretending like this is enough for me." Ethan finally turned to her, knife still in hand, which, to be clear, he gently placed on the counter before responding, like a man very aware of symbolism. "You're not pretending, Melissa. You've made it pretty clear I'm not enough for you." And just like that, her mouth outran her judgment. "You know what?" she snapped. "I am tired of being with someone who's just average, who thinks his biggest accomplishment is showing up and marrying me." Silence. Not the passive-aggressive kind. The kind that cracks through the room and makes everything feel colder than it should. Ethan didn't yell, didn't throw anything, didn't even flinch. He just said, "I'm done with this." and walked out of the room like someone who'd finally put down a heavy bag he didn't realize he didn't need to carry anymore. Melissa stood frozen, not victorious, not relieved, just stuck, like someone who pulled the fire alarm in a crowded theater and suddenly realized she was still inside. 2 days later, she packed a bag, walked out with a dramatic, "I'm staying at Lila's for a while, since you clearly don't want to grow with me." She waited for him to stop her, to chase her, to say something. Instead, Ethan simply nodded and said, "If that's what you need, then go." She slammed the door, thinking she'd just started her power arc. She didn't realize she had just written herself out of the story. Melissa had expected her grand exit to feel like a mic drop. Instead, it felt like tripping over your own ego and landing face first into a throw pillow. Lila, bless her self-tanned soul, welcomed her with open arms and an inflatable mattress in the corner of her aggressively pink guest room, also known as the content studio. Melissa called it a fresh start. Lila called it temporary. Everyone else called it what it was, awkward. But Melissa didn't let that stop her. No, she went into full rebrand mode. Out came the selfies, the carefully crafted captions, the blurry bar photos with captions like, "Thriving, growing, healing." Meanwhile, she was silently debating whether she could afford gas or groceries that week. She still hadn't heard from Ethan. Not a text, not a call, not even a passive-aggressive meme. At first, she was outraged. How dare he not beg her to come back? Didn't he realize this was the part of the movie where the guy shows up at the airport with flowers and a heartfelt monologue? But Ethan was just living, quietly, peacefully, paying rent on their apartment alone, going to work, existing without her like it wasn't even hard. Melissa naturally tried to stir the pot. She texted him late one night. "Don't you miss me?" He replied, "I miss who you used to be, not who you are now." If that line had come with background music, it would have been a string quartet playing Ouch. Still, Melissa refused to accept that maybe, just maybe, she had miscalculated. Instead, she leaned harder into the freedom lifestyle, drinks with friends, overpriced appetizers, photo dumps of her spontaneous nights out, all while sleeping on a couch that creaked louder than her conscience. Money started drying up faster than her social media engagement. Turns out pretending to live your best life is expensive. Her part-time job barely covered her phone bill, and Lila's once sunny hospitality began to fade when Melissa's temporary stay hit week 3. Even her friends started to shift. Some nodded along when she vented about how Ethan just never wanted to grow, but others started asking harder questions. Didn't you, embarrass him at that party? Didn't you kind of shut him down all the time? Melissa dismissed them, obviously. "You don't get it. He held me back. I had to push him." But late at night, lying on that lumpy excuse for a mattress, staring at the glow of her phone screen with no new messages, she started to feel the tiniest flicker of doubt. Not regret, her pride wouldn't allow that, but a creeping sense that maybe, just maybe, the only thing she'd really pushed was Ethan away. A month had passed since Melissa's dramatic exit, and the vibes were no longer liberated queen. They were more accidental squatter with a ring light. Lila was getting twitchy, subtle at first, little comments like, "I need to start using the guest room again," or, "You know the algorithm hates inconsistency and extra bodies." Eventually, she just flat out asked, "So what's the plan?" Melissa, in true Melissa fashion, lied. "I'm just figuring out my next move. Manifesting, you know." Her real next move involves staring blankly at a job board while trying to remember how much dignity one needs to apply for a position that included the phrase, "must tolerate yelling." That's when Ethan texted, not, "I miss you," not, "let's talk," just, "Are you coming to pick up your stuff or should I pack it?" Melissa sat there, rereading the message like it was written in a foreign language. That was it? No heartfelt plea? No monologue about how empty the apartment felt without her? Just logistics? It hit her harder than she'd like to admit, so she answered, "I'll come by." When she walked into the apartment, their apartment, it was like stepping into a memory with all the sound turned off. The couch still had that sag on her side. The cheap little lamp she once bought, ironically, still sat by the window. It was clean, it was quiet, and it didn't feel like hers anymore. Ethan was there, folding a dish towel with the calm of a man who had already moved on emotionally, if not geographically. They exchanged awkward greetings. No yelling, no tears. Just two people pretending they hadn't been each other's entire world a few weeks ago. Melissa gathered a box of random things, a couple sweaters, a mug that said, "Rise and Slay," and a notebook filled with half-baked business ideas. She didn't linger. She couldn't. Every minute in that space felt like trying to hold on to air. As she walked out, Ethan simply nodded. Not cold, not warm, just done. Later that night, in Lila's over-decorated bathroom, Melissa cried, quietly. Not the loud, performative kind. The kind that comes with the realization that you've lost something important and can't even blame anyone else for it. She told herself, he should have tried harder. He should have fought for me. He should have changed. But there was a voice, small, persistent, that whispered, he was happy with the life you tore apart trying to make it look better online. She ignored it. For now. If Melissa thought rock bottom had a clear floor, she was wrong. Turns out it had a trapdoor, and she stepped on it willingly when she re-downloaded every dating app known to man. Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, something called Spark Me that might have just been a scam disguised as a pastel interface. Her logic? I just need a distraction. The results? Mixed, at best. Her first date was with a guy who referred to himself in the third person as a visionary. He showed up in loafers with no socks and talked about crypto the entire time, even when she brought up her dead houseplant just to change the subject. The second one spent 20 minutes explaining why he thought horoscopes were a government trap. When the check arrived, he said, "You seem like a strong woman. You got this, right?" Melissa paid. In silence and rage. It was becoming painfully clear that the market wasn't serving what she thought she deserved. Specifically, a man who would be Ethan but taller, richer, with a six-pack and a marketing degree. But all she was getting were podcasts in human form. She tried to convince herself this was empowering, that she was healing, that this must be what growth looks like, a string of underwhelming conversations, lukewarm cocktails, and the deep yearning for someone who once bought her favorite granola without being asked. Meanwhile, Ethan remained unbothered, or at least convincingly so. No posts, no late-night texts, no dramatic declarations, just silence. The kind that meant he wasn't waiting. Melissa checked his profile once. He hadn't blocked her. He just didn't exist online the way he used to in her world. And that stung worse than any left swipe. Back at Lila's, the energy had shifted from bestie support bubble to unpaid roommate vibes. Lila had started casually dropping brochures for co-living spaces and co-working cafes. Subtle, brutal, effective. Melissa was running out of distractions, money, and people to blame. In the quiet moments, when her phone was dry and her eyeliner was smudged and there was no one to impress, she started facing a terrifying thought. Maybe the life she had wasn't small. Maybe she just didn't know how to appreciate it. By the time fall rolled in, Melissa had stopped pretending she was figuring it all out. Her carefully curated captions had dried up, her posts turned sparse, and her mirror selfies weren't hitting like they used to. Something about taking a photo in a borrowed robe next to a laundry basket full of someone else's delicates lacked main character energy. One Thursday morning, after another forgettable date with a guy who didn't believe in chairs, Melissa stood in front of a cafe holding her lukewarm coffee and finally admitted what she'd been dancing around for months. She had torched her own house trying to make the chimney more Instagrammable. And Ethan? He hadn't reached out. Not once. Not to check in. Not to ask how she was. Not even to return the rice cooker she left behind. It hit her all at once. Not like a tragedy, but like paperwork you forgot to file. Final, dull, and completely your own fault. She considered messaging him. She opened the chat, stared at the empty box, wrote, "Hey," paused, deleted it, because deep down, she knew. She didn't want to say sorry. She wanted to say, reverse it. She didn't want to own her part in the mess. She wanted him to pretend none of it had happened, that she hadn't humiliated him, manipulated him, reduced him to a prop in her self-marketing campaign. But Ethan wasn't a character in her story anymore. He'd taken his piece and left the set. So instead, she sat on a bench, watched strangers live their small, quiet lives. No filters, no captions, just moments. And felt the full weight of what she'd traded away for likes, noise, and a fantasy that never showed up. Maybe someday she'd say the words. Maybe not. But for now, all she could do was sit in the silence she created, and finally, painfully, accept that not every fairy tale ends with a grand gesture. Some just end. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. I wish you a great mood and good luck.